All right, world history students, today we are learning about Standard 1 in the Byzantine Empire. Today we're going to talk about Christianity a little bit. Tomorrow we got a bigger day on Christianity. We're going to talk about Constantine, all right, a little bit of Christianity and some geography today. So this is going to be a quick lesson, and then you've got a map activity to do. Everything, of course, is always linked in the agenda. So let's talk about, there's a blank slide. I think we skipped one. There we go. Constantine. All right. So you're always asking, well, what do I need to write down? Write this down. Okay. There are two things that you need to know about Constantine. Number one, he made Christianity legal in the Roman Empire, which would include the Byzantine Empire. And he passed something called the Edict of Milan. We're going to talk in a minute more about the history of Christianity within the Roman Empire. The second thing he did that we've already talked about is he moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium. Remember, this is, and that's in Asia Minor, which today is Turkey. So you can kind of see there. Remember that would lead to the downfall of the Roman Empire on the western side. Also, so did Christianity, because people didn't want to serve in the military. So these two big decisions that Constantine made were, making Christianity legal and moving the capital would be two of the contributing factors to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, but it would be key to the success of the Eastern Roman Empire to the Byzantine Empire. It would make that empire stronger, and it would allow Christianity to be preserved. So he, in the Catholic Church and in the Eastern Orthodox Church, is considered a saint because he protected the Christians. So he's big in Christianity. He's St. Constantine now. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about religion in the Roman Empire. We already talked a couple days ago about how Romans are polytheistic. That means they have many gods. And so their gods are very similar to the Greek gods. And we talked about that the other day, that the Greek god is Poseidon, and forgot who it was. And the Roman god is Neptune. Sorry, I forgot who it is. And so really they took the gods of the Greeks, they renamed them Roman names, and that became their gods. As they get to having an emperor, so that's a progress they go through. First they have a Roman Republic, then they get to having an emperor. The emperor wants to be looked at as a god and treated as a god. So that becomes an issue with Christianity. Now, the Romans in general were not particularly religious. They had these polytheistic just means many gods. They had many gods, not strongly religious. And as they would take over the different territories and bring them into the Roman Empire, in general, they were pretty tolerant of other religions. And so there were lots of different religions within the Roman Empire. Definitely the Jews were within the Roman Empire, and all different kinds of religions. They brought the Persians in, and they had like Zoroastrianism. So lots of different religions came into the Roman Empire, and the Romans didn't impose their religion on others. They tolerated the other religions. As long as you paid your taxes, they really didn't care. So at first, Christianity is tolerated. Remember, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism. Jesus was born as a Jew, and then, he becomes this leader of Christianity and then is crucified. That all happens, his birth, the Christmas story and all that all happens within the Roman Empire. And so he grows up and then is crucified by the Romans. And so once he dies, then Christianity begins to grow. And they're spreading the message of Christianity along the roads of the Roman Empire. So they're spreading that message. At first, it wasn't a big deal. Again, Romans are tolerant. But as Christianity got bigger, then the Romans saw it more as a threat. And the the Christians refused to see the emperor as a god. There's only one God to the Christians. And so that became a problem. The emperors wanted to be treated as a god, worshipped as a god, and Christians weren't having it. And so they became angry at the Christians, and soon it became okay to persecute the Christians. And so you can see that picture on the left or on the right there is, Christians in the lion's den. I think it's Daniel in the lion's den. is the biblical story of it, and that's talking about the persecution of Christians. So then for hundreds of years, they persecute the Christians. Okay, well, at least 100 years or so. So then they begin, rounding up the Christians. So Christianity has to go underground. Okay, and this is where Constantine comes in. Constantine was a military leader, and ultimately he would become the emperor of the Roman Empire. His mother was a Christian, they think. Okay, and at one point, Constantine goes into battle. He's leading his troops into battle, and he talked about this. He saw a vision of what he thought was the Christian cross, and then he wins the battle. So he ultimately will become Christian. He's baptized really kind of on his deathbed, but he ultimately becomes a Christian. So when he becomes the emperor, of course, he's very sympathetic to the cause of the Christians. And he passes the Edict of Milan, which just allows religious tolerance, including tolerance of Christians in the Roman Empire. So now Christians are no longer persecuted. They're allowed to practice their religion. So what had to go underground because of the persecution now comes above ground. And again, it's going to continue to spread through the Roman Empire. And ultimately, a subsequent, an emperor that comes later, I think his name's Theodosius, will actually make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. So it will go from something small, it grows, then they persecute it, then Edict of Milan is passed, and now it is legal again, and then ultimately it becomes the religion. They ditch the polytheistic gods that they had used, and Theodosius makes it the official religion. Okay, so that is, the Edict of Milan is very important, especially in Christianity, but in history, because Christianity really has a big effect, especially on European history, and even American history. And so it's important that we understand where it came from. So now it becomes a big religion. It flourishes throughout the empire. And then later we'll talk about how Christianity splits between the West and the East. So we'll talk about that in a later lesson. So Constantine's a big thing. Edict of Milan, Christianity is legal. Okay, so the second thing he does is he moves the capital. And we've already talked about the fact that Romans just built roads everywhere. All roads lead to Rome. That was always kind of the saying about the Romans. They had roads leading back to their capital city. So they'd go clear out to Gaul, which is now France, conquer the Gauls, and then build roads back to Rome. This way the military could travel back and forth along the roads and protect this Gaul that had been incorporated. That's just an example. The tax dollars could flow in from Gaul into Rome, into the capital. So throughout the empire, all around the Mediterranean Sea, those roads connected everybody to Rome. So the Romans would bring you in, they'd make you a citizen. Like I said, generally they tolerate your religion. Basically, they just wanted you to be loyal and pay taxes. Okay, and that's how they brought people into the empire. So Constantine, remember, he comes into power after Diocletian splits the empire into two. You've got the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. Constantine reunites the empire. So now he's ruling the entire empire around the Mediterranean. But he decides it's better to move the capital away from Rome. Rome's getting sacked by invaders all the time. So he's going to move the capital to a place called Byzantium. It ultimately will become known as Constantinople. And so he moves the capital from Byzantium. And as a result, remember, the western side's going to start to crumble. They don't have the capital of Rome at their center anymore. And so it's going to cause the deterioration of the western half of the empire because the capital is not centered. When I say move the capital, he literally disassembled buildings and hauled them over to Byzantium. Okay, I can't remember if he has the city name for him. I think it's conflicting reports, or once he dies, they name it for him. But ultimately, Byzantium, which is just a backwater small trading town, becomes the capital of the Roman Empire and becomes known as Constantinople, which means city of Constantine. Okay, so Constantinople just means city of Constantine. Okay, and so in the end, the West is going to collapse. We've already talked about that, but the East will thrive. And part of the reason is the geography of Constantinople. So that's the next slide. Okay, so why did he move it? All right, again, he had reunited the Western and Eastern halves, and he wanted to create a new Rome. He called it Nova Roma. You don't have to know that. That's pretty obscure. All right, why Byzantium? Okay, Byzantium again becomes Constantinople. You can hear the bells in the background. I'm back at school today, clearly. So why Byzantium? It is closer to the center of the empire. So it's more central in the empire, the reunited empire, than Rome is. It's also surrounded by water. Okay, it sits out on a peninsula. And so it was much easier to defend. Remember, Rome's constantly getting sacked by invaders from the north. Here, it was much easier to defend, and they would start constructing massive walls around the city, which really became impenetrable. People could not attack the city because it was protected by massive walls, and we'll look at those later. It had all kinds of different layers to the walls. Only when gunpowder is developed and they have cannons and they can blow cannonballs through the walls, in the 1400s, that's when the city of Constantinople will fall to the Ottoman Turks because they have gunpowder. It's going to take some big guns, literally big guns, to blow through those walls. Otherwise, it allows Constantinople to stand. So the geography is very important. The fact that the city sits on a little peninsula, an isthmus, they call it, and is surrounded by water. So it makes it easy to protect. They can get up on those walls and shoot arrows down at anybody that's trying to attack. They're going to have to come by boat. You really can't come across from Asia without them being able to defend themselves. All right. The other thing is that this place is very central for trade. It connects the Roman Empire to Asia. And so there was really good trade. They really liked those Asian goods, silks, and other products. And so it made Byzantium, which becomes Constantinople, very, very wealthy because the trade is hooking in, 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. So that's really important too. There's an excellent harbor there, so it allows for the sea trade as well. And again, it becomes the crossroad between the East and the West, specifically for trade. So the geography of Constantinople is going to allow it to be protected, unlike Rome, which is getting sacked. Invaders are attacking it all the time. It's going to be protected, and it's going to promote trade, which is going to keep that eastern part of the empire really wealthy for another 1,000 years. Okay, so this, if you're on, let's see if I don't know if I can do it from here. This is an example of the walls of Constantinople. This is kind of what's left. So you see this wall and it kind of lets you do a 3D. So it's just, see, these are the original walls of Constantinople, the only parts that are still standing today. Today, if you wanted to go to Constantinople, it's been renamed Istanbul. When the Muslims took it over in 1453, they renamed it Istanbul. And I just wanted you to see, this is a 3D tour. Hopefully I'm not making you sick, of the walls. So there you go. That is the walls. So Istanbul, not Constantinople. It's hard for me not to sing that. There's a very famous song by We Might Be Giants called Istanbul, not Constantinople. It's actually in here so you can listen to it. And so after Constantinople falls, this is in 1453. So we have the western half of the empire falls in 476. Almost 1,000 years later, the eastern part, the Byzantine Empire, will fall to the Muslims, the Ottoman Turks, and they'll come in and take it over. So what is a Christian empire will be overtaken by the Muslims. And so that part of the world, they have Christians and Muslims. And so today they call it Istanbul. So if you want to go find it, you can see it's right up here, the big red arrow, but it's part of Turkey, and it's called Istanbul. And this is the song, so I don't know if you can hear it. We're running out of time. And then there's another 3D tour for you to look at. So if you go there You will see it. See ya.